He never believed in love. To him, marriage was nothing more than a business arrangement, a contract with benefits. So when the cold and calculating CEO agreed to a marriage of convenience, it was purely strategic. She was perfect on paper, poised, intelligent, and exactly the kind of wife who wouldn't demand his heart. But what he didn't know was that she had a secret, one that could shatter everything he thought he controlled. From the moment they exchanged vows, something about her didn't add up. She played the role of the dutiful wife flawlessly, always calm, always composed, but there were cracks in her perfect facade. The way she flinched at his touch, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. And then, the whispers, the late-night phone calls she thought he didn't hear. He told himself he didn't care. Their marriage wasn't real after all. But when a single mistake exposes the truth she's been hiding, he realizes he might have just married a woman who could destroy him. Or worse, a woman he might not be able to let go. And just when he thinks he has her figured out, she turns to him with a look that chills him to the bone and says, "There's something you don't know." What is she hiding? And why does he suddenly feel like he's the one trapped in a dangerous game? The moment those words left her lips, the air between them shifted. He had built his empire on control over his business, his emotions, and now his marriage. But for the first time in his life, he felt something slip through his fingers. She stood before him, her expression unreadable, her voice steady, but he could see it, the fear flickering in her eyes. He had seen it before in business meetings, in negotiations where the stakes were life-changing. It was the look of someone on the edge, someone carrying a burden too heavy to bear. He could have walked away. He should have. This wasn't part of their agreement, no secrets, no complications, no emotions. And yet, against all logic, he found himself saying, "Then tell me." She hesitated, her lips parting as if to speak. But something held her back. Instead of answering, she turned away, her fingers tightening around the edges of the silk robe draped over her shoulders. It wasn't the reaction of a woman playing games. It was something else, something deeper. That night, he barely slept. He had always prided himself on reading people, dissecting their weaknesses, using their vulnerabilities to his advantage. But this woman, his wife, was a mystery he couldn't crack. The next morning, he watched her from across the breakfast table, his coffee growing cold as she sipped hers with the same distant poise she always carried. He decided to push. "You never answered me last night," he said, keeping his voice casual, but he saw the way her fingers tightened around the porcelain cup. "I don't think it matters," she said without looking up. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "If it didn't matter, you wouldn't have said anything at all." Her silence was answer enough. Days passed, and the distance between them grew heavier. It wasn't just a matter of curiosity anymore. Something was wrong. The way she always seemed to check her phone when she thought he wasn't looking. The way her breath hitched whenever an unknown number called. The way she never quite met his eyes when he spoke. Then one evening, he found her standing on the balcony, her phone clutched in her hand, her shoulders tense. She hadn't noticed him watching, hadn't heard him step closer until he was right behind her. "Who keeps calling you?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. She startled, turning sharply, but she masked it quickly. Too quickly. "No one important." He took a step closer. "Don't lie to me," she exhaled, looking past him, out into the city lights. "It's just someone from my past." "It's nothing." But he knew better. And he knew that whatever she was hiding, it wasn't nothing. The next day, he had someone look into her past. He told himself it was for his own protection. Their marriage might have been built on convenience, but that didn't mean he could afford to be blindsided. What he found was more than he expected. She had changed her name. Legally. Her records before 5 years ago were almost non-existent. It was as if the woman he had married had simply appeared out of nowhere. That night, as he sat in his study, staring at the documents in front of him, she walked in. "You had me investigated," she said quietly. He didn't deny it. Instead, he pushed the papers across the desk toward her. "Who are you really?" For a moment, he thought she might lie again. But then, she lifted her gaze to his, something raw flashing in her expression. "I never meant for you to find out like this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Find out what?" His patience was wearing thin. She took a deep breath, as if gathering courage, and then she said something that made the ground shift beneath him. "The man who keeps calling me. He's not just from my past. He's the reason I had to disappear." And just like that, everything he thought he knew about her, about their arrangement, about the control he thought he had crumbled. For a long moment he said nothing. Her words echoed in the space between them, settling like dust over the carefully constructed walls of his control. He had faced corporate betrayals, ruthless competitors, and high-stakes negotiations that could ruin fortunes overnight, but nothing had ever unsettled him like this. She was hiding from someone. Someone dangerous. His jaw tightened. Start from the beginning. Her fingers hovered over the documents on his desk, but she didn't look at them. Instead, she wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to hold something inside. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, haunted. "I was engaged before," she admitted. "It was a mistake. I didn't see it at first, but he was controlling. Manipulative. And when I finally tried to leave, he made sure I knew I never could." A slow, cold anger settled in his chest. He had expected a lie, an excuse, maybe even some desperate attempt to cover her tracks, but not this. How bad did it get? His voice was low, measured. She hesitated. Then, almost imperceptibly, her hand shook. "Bad enough that I had to change my name. Bad enough that I had to disappear." He inhaled sharply, leaning back, processing what she was telling him. This wasn't just some forgotten ex-boyfriend calling in the middle of the night. This was something darker. "And now he's found you." She nodded once, the movement stiff, controlled. "I don't know how." "I was careful. But the call started last month. And then little things." She swallowed. "I thought I saw someone watching me outside the building. My apartment lights flickering when I hadn't touched the switch. My email getting hacked. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then I heard his voice on the phone. A muscle in his jaw ticked. He had met men like this before, powerful in all the wrong ways, using fear and control as their weapons. And now this man thought he could reach into his life? Into his marriage? No. That wouldn't happen. "What does he want?" he asked. Her gaze dropped and he could see the tension in her shoulders. "Me." Back under his control. The very thought made something dark unfurl inside him. "That's not going to happen." She looked up then, something unreadable in her expression. "This wasn't supposed to be your problem." His grip tightened on the edge of his desk. "You're my wife." She let out a short, almost bitter laugh. "A wife on paper, nothing more." Something about the way she said it irritated him. "That doesn't change the fact that you're mine to protect." Her breath hitched slightly, and for the first time, the ice in her demeanor cracked. It was brief, just a flicker of emotion, but he saw it. A long silence stretched between them before she finally nodded. "So what now?" He already knew. "Now we handle this." The next morning, he made calls. He had contacts in security, people who owed him favors. Within hours, a team was stationed discreetly around their home, monitoring any suspicious movement. He had surveillance installed in every corner of their penthouse. But most importantly, he started digging. This man from her past, he needed to know exactly who he was dealing with. By nightfall, the name was in front of him. A man with wealth, influence, and a dangerous obsession. And he was coming for her. The threats escalated quickly. A single red rose left at their front door. A note slipped into her car with the words, "Did you think I'd forget?" And then, a direct message on his phone, "She was mine first." That was the moment the cold CEO felt something he hadn't in a long time, pure, unrelenting rage. For years, he had lived by logic, by reason. He had built his empire on calculated moves, never letting emotions cloud his judgment. But this wasn't business. This was personal. "You're staying with me," he told her that night. She frowned. "I already live here." "No," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You don't leave my sight." "Not until this is over." She could have fought him on it. She usually did when it came to control. But instead, she exhaled and simply nodded. The nights grew tense. He was always watching, always waiting for the next move. And in that time, something shifted between them. She was no longer just his convenient wife. She was the woman who kept him up at night, the woman he found himself watching when she wasn't looking. The woman he couldn't ignore. And when she finally let her guard down, when she let him see her fear, her vulnerability, he realized something even more dangerous. He wanted her. Not just to protect. Not just to keep safe. But as his. It came to a breaking point one night when she woke up gasping, another nightmare clawing at her. He was at her side before he even thought about it, gripping her wrists gently, steadying her. "It's okay," he said, his voice low. "You're safe." She looked at him, her breathing uneven. And then, for the first time, she leaned into him. Just slightly. Just enough for him to feel the warmth of her against his chest. And everything changed. But there was still unfinished business. The man from her past wasn't done. The next morning, his security team intercepted a man attempting to enter their building. The intruder never made it past the lobby before being restrained, but the message was clear: he wasn't going to stop. So he made a decision. It was time to end this. That night, he had her escorted to a secure location. She protested, of course, but he wouldn't risk it. Not with what he was about to do. Then he made the call. "I don't know what kind of power you think you have," he said when the man answered. "But it ends now." The voice on the other end laughed. "You think you can take something from me and walk away? She was never yours," he said coldly. "And if you come near her again, you'll wish you never made that mistake." There was silence. And then, amusement. "You think money makes you untouchable?" "No," he said smoothly. "But I do think power does. And I have more than you. Try me." The line went dead. And just like that, the war ended before it even began. By the next morning, the man from her past had disappeared. No more calls. No more threats. His team confirmed it, he had backed down. And just like that, she was free. But something had shifted between them. The walls that once stood between them had cracked, leaving something raw, something real. And as she stood before him, no longer afraid, no longer running, she met his gaze with something else entirely. Trust. And maybe, just maybe, something more. 4-0